to DCS P-51D Mustang taxi and takeoff training. I'm Top Gun with the AKA War Dog Squadron. So, of course, since this is a Mustang, it's a tail dragger aircraft, so this is not going to be like the modern aircraft in DCS that you may be used to piloting. It's going to be a little different in regards to taxiing. Two aspects is the tail wheel lock and the fact that you can't really see in front of you. I'm going to leave the canopy closed so I'm not having to battle the engine noise as much, but normally you would have the canopy open so you can kind of try and stick your head out as best you can while we do a zigzag. So obviously we have to have our parking brake off, so hit your toe brakes to make sure that the parking brake handle pops in, and you should be good to go at that point. You don't need a whole lot of thrust to get rolling in the P-51, and you'll want to keep in mind the tail wheel can be free spinning or it can be locked in place, and what controls that is the stick. So if you push it forward, it's freewheeling. You can do a donut right here in a single spot and not move an inch forward. You can just spin around on one wheel. You will need to have your differential brakes key map, so you'll have to have rudder pedals, or you'll have to have a stick with a twist function for rudder or that kind of thing, and you'll definitely have to have two separate keys bound, one for the left brake and one for the right brake. So I've also got my controls indicator up here so you can see my controls. So got the elevators, ailerons, rudder, throttle, and wheel brakes. So once we get to the runway and we go ahead and do a takeoff roll, you'll want to pay really close attention to these controls here to see just what's going on with my control inputs as we go down the runway. So let's go ahead and throttle up a little bit, and we're going to start off with by just a little bit, and we're going to tap the right brake, and we've got the tail wheel free spinning at the moment, and once you get some momentum going, it'll keep on spinning. So hit the left brake to null it out, and then we can pull the stick back to lock it in place so that we can track along a straight line. And now if we want to do a small adjustment, we can just hit a differential brake like to the right or to the left, and it'll adjust a little bit, but it won't keep freewheeling. And if you're on a server that permits exterior, you can cheat a little bit by hitting your F2 view so you can see what's going on. If you're just doing stuff on your own, I highly recommend making use of the F2 view to get lined up precisely on the runway, make your life a little easier when you're just learning how to take off. But I'll show you real quick what we can do here. I'm going to freewheel the tail wheel. I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick roundabout here. So I'm just spinning on my right wheel. I'll pull it back to lock it, and we'll get out to the runway here. And as always, don't forget to contact ATC. Obviously, we've already taxied a little bit, so we've kind of put the cart before the horse a little. And you'll see that if you haven't requested taxi clearance yet, if you bring up the radio at that point, it'll basically skip over the taxi. Now it's basically gone straight to requesting takeoff. So let's go ahead and do it.
Call key in field 1-1. Request takeoff.
Oh, and it would help to have the radio on the right frequency. My ATC is always set to the Bravo channel.
Call key in field 1-1. Request takeoff.
Enfield 1-1. Call key. You are cleared for takeoff when ready. Climb 300 at QFE 29.89.
And it's usually a good idea to do this if for no other reason than they give you the pressure. So you can go to your altimeter here and you can zoom in on it. And you can dial this in appropriately so you can get it down to 0. I mean, you can just get it down to, you can just adjust until it's to 0 feet anyways without even listening to ATC's barometric, but you know, it sometimes will make your life easier depending on what aircraft you're flying to get the QFE directly from them. And it doesn't hurt to recage your ADI briefly too. Just click and hold and then let it go. Alright, so for the P-51, you do not need flaps. If it is a short field takeoff, then yes, you could do like 1 or 2 notches, but I wouldn't do any more than that. But since this is a long runway, we're not going to need it. So let's go ahead and get lined up out here. So I'm going to freewheel the tail, rotate around. Once we're mostly lined up, I'll swing it around and then I'll lock the tail wheel. And you'll want to move forward just a little bit further just to make sure that it's locked straight and true. And then go ahead and hold the brakes. And again, if you want to cheat, you can go to your F2. As you can see, I'm lined up pretty well there. Alright, so what you're going to want to do at this point is just take a gander at the controls indicator down here to watch my control movements. And my method for most of the World War II fighters is basically to just gun it. Full throttle. You just basically don't give the aircraft time to develop any shimmies that may end up turning into adverse yaw as you go down the runway. Now I don't mean jam it to full throttle in like a second. I do it gradually, but I do it rather swiftly. So I'm kind of doing the brute force attack method. I tend to do a little bit of right rudder. You should, if you've gone through the checklist, you should already have 5 degrees of right rudder trim already introduced. But you may still want to do a little bit of right rudder, especially if you're doing it aggressively. And you'll also want to keep the stick back in your lap to keep the tail wheel locked. And you'll probably want to have it off to the right to introduce some right aileron as well to help counteract torque. So let's go ahead and release the wheel brakes and let's go ahead and do it. And the moment you start feeling the aircraft start responding to your stick inputs, null things out. And you may have to introduce forward stick. You don't want to climb too much too quickly. Once you've got a positive rate, go ahead and retract your gear, which is this lever down here. I've got a key bound. I recommend that you have it key bound as well. Go ahead and pull the engine back a little bit. So at this point, you can go ahead and remove your rudder trim. Click and drag or just mouse wheel over it. And you're airborne. Now, you'll want to do some cleanup. If you have your flaps down, obviously you want to pull those up. So that's the yellow lever down here. Make sure that's in the full up position. Verify that your landing gear is up. So make sure we don't have red light. And if you got the F2 view, you can verify externally that the gear's up. At this point, if you're going to be talking to AI wingmen and whatnot, you may need to change your radio over to the appropriate channel. And now, of course, we'll want to go ahead and get your weapons ready. So we want to turn on the gyro for the gun sight. So this into the down on position. And go ahead down here, select this to up position for guns and camera. And if you want, you can switch your gun sight to either the gyro or the fixed. This is the fixed one. This is fixed and gyro, and that's gyro. And if you know what aircraft you're going to be going up against, you can go ahead and adjust the wingspan and the distance. I've got those keybound as well. We'll put it to like 35 feet, and we'll put it to like minimum distance. And we'll go ahead and arm the rear radar warning system, which is this left switcher here to the up position. And last but not least, we'll do our gun heat and our pitot heat. And once you're about to go into combat, you obviously don't want to make it easy for your enemies to spot you, so you can turn off your lights. And that's pretty much it. You're good to go at this point. Always remember, of course, to watch your engine management. So make sure your manifold pressure isn't too high. Same thing for your RPMs. You want to stay below the red lines. And even then, as you can see, I'm already above green line for temperature. So I want to pull my RPMs back to about maybe 25 and pull the manifold pressure back as well. And if you're going into a dogfight, you can improve that by pulling open these guards and opening up manually the radiator and oil cooler radiator doors to maximum to increase the cooling capacity. But that's pretty much it. You now have your P-51 up and going. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Hope this has been helpful. Thank you.